Hello, my fine friends. Welcome back to a very special episode of Destination Discourse. This is the 50th episode. We've made it to half a century. I'm your host,
Oh
Stuart
yeah.
Butler, and I'm joined today with my co-host who is ever present. It is the one, the only, the mighty Adam Stoker. How are you, sir?
Wow. You know, I'm great, Stuart, and ever present is a good description because I know you just can't get rid of me, and so I'm really happy to be here.
Well, until that restraining order comes in, I guess I'm stuck with you, but I'm
The
working
legal
on it.
system's a grind.
Yeah. So this is a special episode. Did you imagine, Adam, when we started this, that we would be 50 episodes in, or did you think we'd give up after like three? Well, honestly, what was your opinion?
I didn't even think we'd still be friends at this point, much less have a show that we continue to co-host.
It's been touch and go there a few times, I know, but on both sides, I think you could argue either way for that. But this is, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, I know you have another podcast. You've just gotten to 200 episodes, 400 episodes, 700.
400.
What was it? 400 episodes. And I had a previous podcast, with my previous life, where we were in the 200s, I think, when I left. And so this is to do that once is amazing. To do that twice, have two different shows that you get to 50 podcasts. Most people give up after two or three episodes. And so the fact we're still going, the fact our audience is growing, the destination gets bigger and bigger every episode. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting hit up on LinkedIn left and right from fans that are saying how smart I am, how amazing I am, how much I just outgun you on every episode. But
Yeah, I
I don't know
mean,
if you get
listen,
those too.
I'm getting lots of outreach too, and it's the exact same thing. How smart Stuart is, how handsome Stuart
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
and I just tell them, hey, this is the wrong email address. You'll have to just reach out to info@visitmyrtlebeach.com if you want to send those messages.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Man, I totally kid, but I am getting seriously some folks reaching out and talking about the great things. Why are you pulling up Stu's News? We don't have Stu's News today because
Well,
this is the 50th episode. But
well,
you're
first
pulling
of
up
all,
the.
there's a Zoom feature that I haven't really leveraged yet in the show, and I'm pretty proud of my discovery
Oh,
that
you're
instead of
still
it,
there. I can see you in front of the screen.
yes,
That's
yes,
magic.
it is
People watching on
me with
YouTube,
Stu's News in the background.
you're in for a treat. You got Sue's News in the background because Stu's spelt wrong. And then you got Adam over the top. That's a lot of Adam going on. But Adam, we
Yeah.
decided we weren't going to do Stu's News for the 50th episode. So you're
Well,
throwing me for a loop here.
we is a little aggressive here.
Okay.
You decided, and this is my mutiny today. So we'll
Okay.
play the jingle, and then I'm going to get into Adam's Stu's News.
Okay. We may not have an episode 51 then, if you're going rogue on this.
I think you'll like this one. It goes along with the emails you've been getting.
You got the lyrics at the bottom, but you're covering the lyrics. You got to lean to the side a little bit.
Wrong side. I got
Warp
to see
anew.
it.
I never knew what it said at the end there. I just read the lyrics for the first time. Warp anew.
Okay, I'll do it this way from now on so that you can actually see it in the background and get the
Yeah.
full experience like I get every time.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. That's legitimate. So go on then. Hit me. What we
So,
got?
Stuart, I know you didn't want me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Guys, Stuart has received a pretty prestigious award, I would say, and I I think that first of all, it's really important to note that for all the hard time I give you, I'm really impressed with what you've done at Visit Myrtle Beach and really everywhere you've been. And it's why I feel really good about co-hosting this show with you. I mean, look, my standards are high, right? And so the fact that I allow you to co-host this show with me, it's a big deal, right? And I do want to recognize the fact that you won a pretty significant award, and it's the 2025 Content Marketer of the Year by the Content Marketing Institute. Now, this isn't a destination marketing industry award. This is content marketing across the board. And they specifically talk about your work with Traveling the Spectrum, Charlie's Place, and some of the other content work that you've done, not the least of which is this podcast. And I'm sure this had a massive impact on you
Yeah,
winning that
this is
award.
definitely the main one that they saw
Yeah,
for sure.
they
100%.
specifically call out your bold leadership, the authentic representation of the destination, strategic inclusivity, and your business impact, which I think is really poignant. And I think you've done an incredible job with content marketing. So if any of you that are listening get the opportunity, make sure you shoot Stuart a message while you're already telling him how great he is, apparently. Make sure you let him know that you're proud of him for receiving that award.
Well, Adam, thank you. You know I'm going to do it. I have to do it, but by authentically mean it. Like I couldn't have been even in the running for this award if it weren't for people like you and the team that here at Visit Myrtle Beach, right? That you guys make me smarter, stronger every day, and really, I just get to be the front man for an amazing band, of brothers and sisters that create amazing work every day. The Charlie's Place podcast was a massive collaboration with not just the Visit Myrtle Beach team, but the Atlas Obscura team, the Pushkin team, the Rococo Punch team. I mean, hundreds of people go into making that podcast. We've got Traveling the Spectrum, which is, obviously wouldn't be anything without the folks that we showcase, the families that were brave enough to show their lives, the good, the bad, and the meltdowns. And then obviously the production team at the workshop, the team here on the ground, just hundreds of people go into making this content. I get to take all the credit, I guess, but the credit should go to those folks because they're the ones that lift me up and are willing to have the courage to say yes, let's do this when I come up with these crazy ideas. And so that's what I think a lot of people need to do is they need to surround themselves with people that don't just say why, but sometimes they say why not. They say let's try it. What's the worst that can happen? um, we might fail, but you know what, if we succeed, we might actually change the world as we did with a show like Traveling the Spectrum. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's surreal to win this award, to be honest. But I'm very humbled by it, and yeah, we're just getting
Well,
started. More to come.
I think this is part of you said that the whole team has a part in this, and I totally agree with that. I will say that from a leadership perspective, it's a double-edged sword because you get all of the credit if you succeed, but you also
Yeah.
get all of the credit if you fail. And that's one of the things that I think takes real courage as being a risk taker and a leader at the same time is
Mm.
is the downside is equal to or greater than the possible upside if you succeed. And so the risk you're taking by putting yourself out there, trying something different, breaking the status quo, it's a big deal. And I think rightfully so that if you fail, you'll get the credit. If you succeed, you should also get the recognition that you deserve. And I definitely think you deserve it. The work that you guys have done at Visit Myrtle Beach has been top notch. And I think that's why I've been so proud to do this show with you. Is I think you've done some amazing things, and it's been cool to have a tiny part in it.
Well, thank you, man. I couldn't have done it without you. And yeah, really, it's fun to come into work every day and know you're making a difference and know that you're having an impact, not just in our community and not just on the destination marketing side of things, but now having an influence in content marketing internationally is kind of a cool feeling. But I think we come in, our whole mindset here at Visit Mono Beach is the only way we fail is if we give up. If we have a great idea and we believe in it, we're passionate about it, we're going to do everything we can to make it successful. But we know sometimes we don't hit our goals, we don't hit our benchmarks. It didn't really accomplish what we set out to accomplish, but that's okay because we learned a lot along the way. We maybe learned what didn't work or doesn't work, but we become smarter and better for it. And we couldn't have done, say, the Charlie's Place podcast had we not already done things like I Speak Mama and um, what was the other podcast we
Life's a
did?
beach, and then you die.
Life's a Beach. Yeah, it's been a while since we did it. So, we did those. We learned a lot, and they maybe didn't get the rave reviews and success that we wanted, but we learned how to make a podcast, and we learned what resonates with the audience. And so, we're standing on the shoulders of those, what would be considered by some failures, and where some people would have given up. But you got to keep going. If you believe in
I
it.
th- I think what you're saying is actually now we can get into something that's beyond just recognition of what you did here, because I think you're saying a principle that is so critical for every marketer that's listening. It's like the musicians who, after they die, you go back and find some of their original songs and realize that it wasn't just after they became popular that they were brilliant, but they were actually brilliant the whole time. They just got
Yeah.
discovered at some point in the journey. That's part of as you're learning and building content and strategy, you're going to find things and learnings along the way that help you get farther, more exposure, more success. But what it actually is going to do eventually too is allow people to go back and find some of the originals and realize how great they were, even though they didn't get the exposure that we were hoping for or that they deserve. And that's part of building these assets as a compounding opportunity to get attention over time. The don't give up side of things. I mean, imagine if you had given up after the first podcast you created didn't get all the exposure that you wanted. Traveling the
Hmm.
Spectrum isn't here. Charlie's Place isn't here. And I think that's part of what a lot of people miss when they give up on the first try. Oh, I tried this and it didn't work.
Yeah, there's a little life hack that I found a long time ago, and it's the concept of don't ever quit today, right? Whatever you do, don't quit today. You can get through today without quitting. Let's figure out tomorrow if we're going to quit or not, right? But if you have that mentality every day, you never give up. Right?
I
I'm
love
never
that.
going to quit today. I'm always going to quit tomorrow, maybe, but I'll never quit today. And so
You
that's
know
how
what?
you sort of keep going forward.
That's the inverse of the diet starts tomorrow
Yeah,
attitude.
for sure.
Right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. The other thing I will say is you sort of touched on something that's on my mind a little bit right now is like the concern around AI and it taking away something from us being humans. And part of that is the rigor you go through. Let's say you're writing a book, right? You're writing an amazing piece of literature, or you're writing a self-help book or a marketing book or whatever. Part of the process of you becoming a better person is going through the revisions of that and really digesting the words and understanding them fundamentally and figuring out different ways to say it to communicate exactly the precise point you're making. And so that painful long process of articulating what your thoughts are, in stirring your thoughts up and getting them into a cohesive narrative, that to me, that work is at risk of disappearing if we rely to, and I'm finding myself do this, relying too heavily on ChatGPT or other LLMs to do some of the thinking for us. Because it's easy
Hmm.
for me to write a blog article now where I say, hey, here's a thought, write a blog article about this, and here's a couple of things to put into it, which is what a lot of people are doing now. You can see it's very transparent. There's a lot of great sounding blogs out there, but it's not the rigor to the idea that they used to be, right? It's not as well thought through and crafted as it used to be. It just feels a little more superficial. And I worry a little bit that we're gonna lose that if we don't practice that, actually going through the process of stress testing our thoughts, then I don't know, we become more machine than man. And that's not good for society in the long term.
Yeah, I think there's some people who are using AI to say, what should I think about this?
Hmm.
And then they read the response and say, oh yeah, that sounds good. And then
Yeah.
move forward with it. I think that's the
Yeah, that
side of the
confirmation
guardrail
bias
that we
is
really have to
dangerous.
protect ourselves from.
Yeah, we got to challenge ourselves. So, segue. This is our 50th episode. I almost said 50th anniversary. It'd be a
We've been
golden
together a long
anniversary.
time.
Yeah, you're looking great. So you and I disagreed on what we should do with our 50th episode. I think we both wanted to do a retrospective, right? We wanted to sort of take a pause and say, well, what have we learned, or what has stood out in the first 50 episodes? How have we changed maybe in the first 50 episodes? And we wanted to come at it from different angle. I wanted to sort of talk about how my opinion has shifted on certain subjects, and you wanted to sort of bring out a couple of highlights, like things that stood out to you in terms of some of the conversations. So,
Yeah.
in true fashion, because we couldn't agree, we decided to do both. And so,
It
um,
has been great to watch your opinion shift and get closer to being right over time. The hard part was finding enough content, to be able
uh,
to say
good.
that my mind has shifted because I was kind of right all along.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I feel like we switched roles a little bit right there. You're being meaner to me than I am to you. Um,
I got to make up for Stu's news.
yeah, maybe the next 50 episodes we switch. We switch personas, you know. To the audience at home, I hope people realize this is a shtick, right? When we're mean to each other, they don't actually think we're horrible people. Maybe they do. I don't know. I guess it
Maybe
doesn't
that's
matter.
the intrigue. Let me
Yeah,
listen to these two awful people be mean to each other.
yeah, maybe so. I'm gonna try to be nice. But let's go through a couple of the areas that my opinions have changed, and I'm gonna start on the low hanging fruit, and that is paid paid, earned, and owned media, right? I think you and I back two years ago now or so when we first did your podcast, the Destination Marketing Podcast, we did a 5-part series on I believed my budget would shift pretty quickly from from paid to owned media. And at the time, it was like 10% of my budget should be owned, and then I'm going to ratchet that up as it works. Um, what I've learned, and I've sort of swung back and forward, right? I now value paid media more than I did 2 years ago. And part of that is because I've experienced more diversity in terms of the types of paid media that exist, right? And I'm not just talking about traditional display ads or traditional TV commercials or traditional magazines. I'm talking about integrated packages. I'm talking about brand partnerships and other things that you might pay to do. So part of it is that the paid media landscape has changed. Part of it is that my exposure to those opportunities has changed and performance has continued to do well. But the other side is the own media has been a lot harder. You know, here I am with this award as Content Marketer of the Year, but I probably am more skeptical of our ability as brands to drive quality owned media than I was 2 years ago. You know, it's hard. It's really, really hard to get it right. And we've done a lot that didn't work out, and that's fine, right? But I think 2 years ago, I was a little utopian, you know, when we did this. And certainly when we started this show, I was a little utopian about it. So I guess I'm more of a realist. You know, I've got some wounds to the scars to show some of these battles we've been through. But now I really do believe that paid continues to drive the engine and that it's essential, and owned and earned work collaboratively with those in a more integrated. So I'm less siloed in my thinking of paid, earned, and owned.
Yeah.
So that's one that I think is apparent to anyone that's listened to these 50 episodes where I've shifted.
I want to respond to that because I actually agree more than you think with what you just said. And one of the things that related to this has shifted for me over time is the value of earned media.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the way LLMs are pulling results, earned media has the highest value compared to earned, shared, and owned. And so I think earned media value has increased a lot in my mind over the last couple of years as well. And then when it comes to paid media, and I think, I've really positioned the argument as owned media versus paid media. And really, where I've landed with this is I still believe in the value of owned media, but because the math equation of marketing in my mind has shifted, and we talked about this before, so I don't want to make the whole episode about this, but the attention plus trust is what's going to lead to success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I do believe that paid media is still an incredibly important vehicle to get attention. But
Yeah.
then I think building trust is usually done through that owned content and better storytelling and not just the catchy headline, pretty picture that we've talked about a ton of times. I really believe that the value is spread amongst the paid, earned, shared, and owned. That's why the Pezzo model exists. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the way we're leveraging paid media is should be to get attention and earn trust.
Yeah. Fair. Totally fair. Cool. So my second one is KPIs. You know, what are we measuring and how do we define success? And this sort of parlays into my third one, but I don't want to get into that one too far. But I think as I consider the role of the DMO, spoiler, that is the third one. Um, I think what we measure matters more, and I think we've sort of talked a lot about vanity metrics. I mean, this started all the way back um, with Zeke Coleman's episode, you know, but
Yep.
it continued with like Jay from Zydeco and some others where we really got sort of deep into the vanity metrics problem and the house of cards that we're sitting on. And so my opinion hasn't really changed there in terms of I think we do over rely on happy metrics, right? We over rely on the most aggressive version of the truth in terms of what we're measuring and how we're justifying our existence. Um, but I think we we are beginning to really pay more attention to net impact as well as like because I was so obsessed with causality early on in this show and trying to only measure the things that we could measure and could draw a direct line back to. But I think there's intangibles, and so I think we've got to start recognizing. So I'm sort of being hypocritical here a little bit, talking out of both sides of my mouth, because while I do think we can't rely on vanity metrics, we also need to acknowledge the intangibles that are hard to measure, right? So I think it's a yes and. I think we need to do a better job finding ways to join the dots in tracking a conversion all the way through to or click or an ad exposure all the way through to a visitation and ultimately to spend. Um, I think we have to absolutely have to pursue that. And I think it's always going to be difficult because we don't control the booking, we don't control the experience. Um, I think we have to pursue that at all costs. But at the same time, I think we also have to step back and say, what's going on with our residents? What's their sentiment? What's their perception towards the visitor economy? And be aware of measuring those so that we can make better strategic decisions, whether that's
Yeah.
dispersing people into different areas or even coming out with the marketing campaign or a pro tourism campaign. So I think the KPIs are shifting for me to look more at resident sentiment, visitor sentiment, stakeholder sentiment, um, even my own team sentiment and the impact we're having on them in looking at things more holistically. Now, some of this might be because my role has also changed, right? We started
Sure.
this show, I was a CMO. Now I'm a president of a DMO. And so my purview has sort of, my aperture's opened a little bit, right? Um, but I'm thinking a lot more about those things that I maybe don't directly impact or can't measure exactly how I impact. But the trend of those over time really matters to whether or not we can continue to do the work we do. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
It totally does. I would compare it to another dynamic that I think everyone can relate to. And I'm about to mention something that could be taken political, but I just want everybody to just understand both administrations of the last however many years are guilty of it. So I don't really care whose fault it is. But we've been told over the course of how long that the economy is doing better than it ever has, right? But when you look at the boots on the ground and how individuals are feeling, we're dealing with inflation, we're dealing with like jobs have been harder to come by, employment is interest rates are hard, and all of those things, right?
Uncertainty, federal shutdowns. I mean, it's crazy.
Wars, like all this kind of stuff, right? And everybody's sitting there going, well, they're telling us the economy is great, but I can't say that I feel that. So who's it great for? Right. And
Hmm.
and I think that's a great comparison for what happens when you're looking only at the vanity metrics and marketing KPIs, but you're not
Hmm.
looking at what's the life quality of life like for the residents and can they feel
Hmm.
the impact of what I'm doing in tourism. If they're having anywhere near the same experience that a lot of us have had with the way the economy's performance has been positioned, there's a disconnect there. And I think
Hmm.
what it's going to result in eventually is you're going to go present all these vanity metrics, say things are going great, and residents are just going to roll their eyes and say, yeah, right. And that's
Yeah.
why I love that's where you went with that.
Yeah, yeah, it's really been quite a journey, and what's intriguing about it is I haven't solved it yet, right? My superpower is a problem solving. I really love to I love a good Sudoku puzzle or stuff like that. Like I like to solve a problem. I think there's problems here that haven't been solved in our industry related to what we track, why we track it. But I do think every DMO has to do at least three surveys on a regular cadence, right? They have to survey the residents and their local stakeholders. They have to survey their visitors, and they have to survey their internal team, right? Those three, to me, are non-negotiables for every DMO. You should know
Yeah,
exactly where you stand and where you're trending on all three of those stakeholders. So yeah, so that's the second one, and then the third and final one. I could have gone on because there's a lot of other things I've changed my mind on, but
sure.
this is probably the biggest transformation for me. Again, this might be because of my role change, but I think it was happening before my role change. And so um, there's a couple of folks that really came on and challenged me. Like when I started this podcast, I was of the belief that we were DMOs, destination marketing organizations. And if you go back to the four Ps, that product was one of the P's. And so it was implied in our mandate as DMOs that we should have a vested interest in place. We should have a vested interest in um, the product in our area, like the accommodation quality, the attractions, things like that. Huh. So I sort of argued against this movement to DSO, like strategy organization, or DXO, which is, I don't even know what that, experience, I think is what people call that one, or DMMO. Like I was very vocal. I'd been on podcasts, other people's podcasts, talking about how I thought that was silly. I still think it's silly that we worry too much about what we're called, right? I don't think that's helpful. I don't think that moves the needle necessarily, although I'm beginning to maybe even change my opinion on that, because I think our brand position in the market influences how we're perceived and then how we can do the work, right? So I'm even second guessing myself as I say these things. Like maybe we should rename ourselves, but I don't think anyone's come up with it. I kind of like DXO, but I think it's a little vanity. Um, but the point being, I think the role of the DMO is a lot bigger than I used to think it was 50 episodes ago. I think our role is a convener in our destination. I think we're one of the only groups that can bring together, whether it's chambers of commerce or economic development, because I do think what we're doing is economic development. I think if I go back to Emily Zatucci's episode where she talked about, is the CMO really a CVO, a chief value officer, and how she spends a lot of her time talking a lot about justifying the work they're doing, showing the data of why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I think that's important. We have great responsibility. We had who do we have on? There was an episode where we talked about the role of the CEO as well. And
Yeah.
again, like, should you be
Kristen.
in, it was Kristen, and she was talking about being involved in one of their festivals there locally and how that was taking a lot of her time, right? And how that was important because it was part of the DNA and the fabric of their community, and not just drove heads in beds, but it was critical to the narrative, right? And so our role is an external role within our, especially as a CEO, CMO. I think you got to get out in your community more. I think you've got to be seen. You got to be a part. You got to be at the table. I go back to Brad Dean's conversation, right, where he
Yep.
talked about how if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yep.
And if you can't get at that table, just go make a bigger table, and then you bring the people to your table, because you've got to control what you can control and influence what you can influence, right? I think we're very uniquely positioned. If we can take our egos out of it, we're very uniquely positioned as organizations to collaborate, to be radical collaborators with every major power broker in your destination, because I think we're at the intersection of the visitor economy, the residents' happiness, um, the business economy. I think we're at that intersection, and so we have a responsibility to make sure that all those things are working in alignment with a universal strategy. And so that's probably my biggest change,
Yeah.
is what do we actually functionally do? I used to think we're a marketing organization that just promoted the destination, right? And I think that's a really important function, but we have tremendous responsibility from our residents in our community, because they're investing their dollars, not our dollars. They're investing their dollars into us in the hopes of having a better quality of life, having prosperity, having health, having hope, all these things that are derivatives of the work we do. So yeah, I've really changed. I don't think we're a
Yeah.
destination marketing organization just in the purest sense anymore. I do think we're bigger, much, much bigger than that. And that surprised me a little bit, how much I've changed on that perspective.
Yeah, it's been fascinating for me outside looking in, right? To be able to watch this evolution and change. I mean, I remember we had our conversation with Heath from Greenville,
Greenville.
South Carolina, and Heath's talked about how your destination marketing organization better be more than just an ad agency, or you're going to be
Hmm.
replaced by one. Um,
Yeah.
so I thought that was an interesting conversation, and watching that evolution, I'm actually seeing destination marketing organizations having the same struggles that advertising agencies actually have. And that's the fact that you really want to be strategic. You really want to have a big part in the strategy. But if you don't have influence high enough the decision making chain, then you're basically just going to be told what needs to be done. And destination marketing organizations are running into the same thing. They're like, well, I've got to have influence on economic development. I've got to have influence on product and what we're doing in the on the product side of the destination and developing a destination. And so it's fascinating to watch kind of the same things that I've struggled with as a vendor to need to get higher up the influence change to influence some of those decisions to be successful. Destinations are now having the exact same dilemma, and they have to get higher up the decision making chain. So I think you're exactly right, and they need influence over almost everything that happens in a community.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's weird. I would love to go back in time and have an argument with myself from back then, because I've really done a 180 on this. I
With
still
AI,
stand
that's not hard to imagine. I actually think that would be a really fun platform to build, is like the ability to argue with your
argue
past
with your
self.
previous. Yeah, that's funny. But I still agree that we spend too much time worrying about the non-consequential, right? And
Yeah.
and so and sometimes we're trying to fix something that's broken by focusing on what we can control. It's like, oh, well, this isn't working. The train's coming off the tracks over here. Let's change our name. Let's put lipstick on the pig and fix it. Um, so I do think the name matters, but I don't think we should be spending as much energy as we do talking about the name as we should just go get to work.
Yeah.
Go build those relationships with your city council, go build those relationships with your county council, go build those relationships with your chambers of commerce and your economic development folks and your hospitality association, and your nonprofit organizations, and get deeply rooted into your community, because ultimately DMOs exist to improve the quality of life of the people that live and work and own businesses in that community. And so, if you're not a part of that community in every sense, in every fabric, have your team go serve on boards, right? Get integrated, because not only will you be able to do a better job serving them, but they're going to see the work you're doing having an impact. You've got to roll up your sleeves, go get integrated as much as you can with your community.
Yeah. I like it.
So another 50 episodes now, I might have flipped back to the other side of this. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll
But I'm
see.
willing to
And
change, right? Which is what this show is about. I'm willing to say, hey, I was wrong about this. My thoughts have evolved over this. So that's why we do this show.
absolutely. I mean, look, for me, I've been thinking about, even though I said I wasn't going to do this, how has my thinking changed? I think one of the biggest things that's changed for me, and one of the biggest values that I've gotten from doing this show, is I've never actually been inside a DMO, right? Like I've only worked as a vendor for the space. And I
Hmm.
feel like with this show, the veil of understanding or lack thereof has been removed, because I get to hear these people that are in the trenches every week give me an in-depth look at what they're struggling with and what their challenges are, what they're trying to get approved. And I really feel like one of the biggest things that's changed for me is empathy for the challenges that the DMO professionals are dealing with on a daily basis. I'll give you an example, and maybe this is where it makes sense to segue into some of my favorite moments of the show. One of our first episodes, I think it was episode 3, we had Will Seccombe on, and we said, why don't DMOs take risks? And
Hmm.
I remember being fairly, I guess, aggressive in my tone as I talk about the importance for destinations to take risks, and it was missing a component of empathy of what the actual internal challenges are that DMO professionals are dealing with, right? And Will, even in talking about, well, I took a risk. I brought Pitbull into town, and then I ended up losing my job over it, right? Like
Hmm.
I, I can see now much more clearly some of the challenges that destination marketing professionals deal with that I couldn't necessarily see before we started this show. And I think that empathy has been really helpful for me to do a better job of identifying how to build a solution for somebody instead of building it in a vacuum when we don't build anything in a vacuum. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, any business, anyone that, especially a business like yours, you need to be obsessed with your customer, right? And we're your customer. Like, there's not a vendor in this space should not be listening to this show. And I don't just say that because of vanity. I say that because not because what you and I say, but you get a direct pipeline to hear the pain points Because we ask guests, what's your biggest pet peeve or pain point? And they come on and talk about it. If I was a vendor in this space, I would be having every one of my team members listening to this and looking for where's the common pain points across multiple people, because that's where we need to create solutions. That's where we need to be putting our energy. Because if there's a pain point that exists that I can solve, people are willing to spend money on that, right? So the vendors should absolutely be doing this. And I mean, I guess drop mic right there, right?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else to add.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like the rate of learning for me for that exact reason that you just described
Hmm.
has been 10x what it was in all the years leading up to doing this
Right.
show. So being able to kind of see behind the curtain a little bit has been really valuable for me. A highlight for me that looking back, it was fun to look back at all the episodes. We've done some really fun episodes. But when
Hmm.
you and I, after the election, looked at the media trends that we were seeing that actually influenced the outcome of the election, just to talk about something that was completely different than our weekly discussions, and it was a bonus episode. I think we did it outside of it was an
We did.
extra.
Yeah,
I
technically this is
really,
episode 51 because we did that bonus
I
episode. You're
guess
right.
that's true. I guess that's
Yeah.
true. But I really enjoyed that episode just because it was totally out of our comfort zone. I think we took a risk
Hmm.
by having that conversation because I think there's people that could hear that and maybe not like some of the things we were saying, but in the spirit of the show, I think we were able to point out some media trends that were really interesting and important, and I just had a lot of fun
It
with
was
that one.
cool. And the fact we newsjacked, right? It was like literally the day after the election as we were having a normal organic conversation. We said, let's
Hmm.
just record this. And yeah, and we put it out within 24 hours of the election, I think. And it was well received for sure. We should
Yeah,
do more of that.
yeah, I agree. I think we should do more of that too. One of my all-time favorite episodes, like this one, I probably think about, and it gets referred to more on this show probably than any other episode, is when Zeke Coleman came on and talked about the
Hmm.
difference between causation and correlation, and he gave us
Hmm.
the red pill, blue pill
Hmm.
analogy, and I just felt like Zeke articulated some of the challenges that are happening on the data side of things, as well as anybody that I've heard, and I've been able to use that to increase my wisdom on that side of things ever since that episode. And so I thought if anybody hasn't listened to Zeke's episode, that was a fantastic one to listen to.
Yeah, it's the one I get more people commenting on still, and this is like almost a year later. You know, when I go to conferences, like, and I don't know that Zeke coined that term. I think he maybe had heard it from someone else, but the
Yeah,
fact
he
that he
gave
sort
someone
of,
else credit
yeah.
on the episode.
But we give Zeke credit because that's who we heard it from. But it's great because it resonated with people, right? People really understood. Oh yeah, we are in the matrix. We A lot of us are taking this blue pill, and we're just staying ignorant, right? And
Hmm.
and maybe some of us need to start taking the red pill and waking up and tackling this in the real world, not in imaginary DMO land. So I the sad thing is I haven't really seen the movement, right? Like people agree with it in principle, but here we are almost a year later. You know, folks, some of the vendors out there are doing a better job than they were, but have we solved the problem? Probably not. There's still a lot more work to be done, right? So I'd like to see
No,
more
but I'll tell you
progress.
what I'm seeing. I'm seeing more people on the destination side with an appetite to find the answer than I
Yeah.
did before. And I'm not saying we caused that with our episode. I'm
No, Zeke
saying
did.
in general, yeah, Zeke did. But I do think the tides are turning where on the destination side, people are taking more ownership and accountability
Yeah.
of getting it right. And I think that shift is going to continue. I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think, again, I don't think this is our show's doing, but I do think there is more of an appetite for people in general to not bury their head in the sand and to have real honest conversations and look more, let's figure out the long-term survival of the industry versus what's expedient or benefits us in the short term, especially when it costs us in the long term, which vanity metrics inevitably will. So, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great one. It's one of my favorites.
Another one that I actually think has proven to be just really poignant is Will Seccombe came on a second time. I'm really giving Will a lot of love here in my favorite moments, but he talked about our DMOs ready for Doge.
Hmm.
And Doge has been interesting because I don't think it's near what the promise was going to be, right? Of all the cutting of budgets and stuff like that. But I'll tell you that even though that may not have been the mechanism, what's happening to destination budgets today is absolutely relevant to that conversation. The ARPA funds are
Hmm.
gone. Some of the bloated teams are now getting much more back in line with what their size should be compared to their budget. I'm seeing a lot of the changes that we predicted would happen on that show in that episode, and
Hmm.
destinations are having to figure out how to do more with less. And I think that is across the board.
Yeah, and that trend is probably going to continue, right? I think I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I think there's a mindset shift within government to sort of cut some of the bloat, and
Yep.
so whether you think travel is bloat or not, there are people that do, right? And so I had a conversation with a congressman recently at the federal level
Name
who,
dropper.
huh? You say
I
name
said
dropper?
name dropper.
I didn't drop the name because I don't want to get in trouble. Who we were talking about U.S. travel defunding, right? And um, they had a couple of talking points, but they really didn't know what was going on. And when I said, "Well, why do you support reducing their budget?" And it's like, "Well, they told us they had plenty of money," and it was such a missed opportunity. Well, we educated that person, right? So then they're going to now sort of go to bat a little bit more. But I think there's a lot of people at the federal level that are just misinformed or ill-informed or underinformed on the value of travel. And so
Yeah.
I do think we've got to continue as an industry to bang that drum. Again, it's tied to the previous thing though. We can't bang that drum on vanity metrics.
Yes.
It doesn't hold up. There's more scrutiny than there's ever been. So we got to do it in like tangible, defensible, grounded data. So
Yeah.
in stories.
I I agree. I also think that conversation, since that conversation, I've seen a lot more people focused on marketing the marketing, treating their local
Yeah,
stakeholders as a target persona that they need to nurture a relationship with. I've seen that happen a lot more over the last year. So, timing
100%.
wise, I think we were on the front end with that
Yeah,
conversation for sure.
for sure.
Um, of course, and we've referenced it a lot, the paid versus owned debate with Katie Briscoe was one of the most fun conversations that we've had on this show, and I really enjoyed it. I think Katie did an incredible job of coming prepared. She most definitely, having used AI to analyze everything negative I've ever said about paid media as her opener, was one of the most impressive tactics I've ever seen, and it was really great to be a part of that. So that's one of the highlights of the show for me. I really enjoyed that episode.
She did a great job. She definitely wins the superlative for most prepared guest, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe CA's up there too with his recent AI one that we've recorded. That was just published. Um, but yeah, that was fun to watch. It was fun to watch you on your heels a little bit, but I thought it was a balanced conversation. We'd love to have Katie back on at some point. And
Yeah.
honestly, that was part of that conversation is part of what led me to shifting positions, along
Hmm.
with some others. So it was great.
Yeah, really great discussion. Um, I I was looking back. Kyle Edmonston, it's funny, his episode might not be one of our most listened to, but I may
Hmm.
have learned more about leadership in that discussion than
Yeah.
maybe I have in any training I've attended or any leadership course which I've gone through a lot. That episode is leadership gold. And so if
Yeah.
if anybody is looking to expand their ability in leadership, go listen to the episode we did with Kyle Edmonston from Visit Lake Charles.
Yeah, that was really good. He did a great job. Yeah, nothing to add there. He's a great leader. We definitely borrowed some of his pearls of wisdom and
Oh
integrated
yeah.
into our process.
Yeah, me too. I also, when you were having like kind of this existential crisis and you called me and you said, we need to do an episode, it was what to do, what do you do when everything changes
Hmm.
episode. That one was really fun for me because we got you kind of giving your just all the things that were kind of circling around in your head and you were able to articulate those. And then I had a week to think about it, digest it, and then come back and record an episode with my response to it. And it was really that one forced me to just think deeply and to have a completely open mind too with some of the things that you were talking about. So those two episodes together, it was fun to, and this is the great thing about having a platform like this, right? Is we get to brainstorm blind in public,
Hmm.
and people listen and see if they agree with what we're saying. I think we had two or three future guests reach out from that conversation and
Yeah.
say they wanted to dive deeper and chat more about it. So I really those two episodes were really fun for me.
Yeah, the pontification is good. It's like that rigor I was talking about earlier. It's like sometimes just thinking through an idea helps you clarify things in a way that you can then make decisions moving forward. I got to tell you, me doing those therapy sessions with you helped me better prepare for what is coming, right? And calm down a little bit. It definitely it relieved a lot of the stress that was on me and the fear and anxiety that was on me for just talking about it. Like it really
Yeah,
did feel like therapy. So I'm definitely in a better headspace now for having
that's
had
good.
that opportunity to vent.
No, but see, these are the conversations that are happening all over the industry. We just happen to record them, and I
Yeah,
think that's really good. Tim Peter reached out from that episode, and we got a great conversation about websites that definitely. So you want to talk about changing minds? I think Tim changed my mind. I was much more bullish on the idea that destination websites would be completely irrelevant sooner than
yeah,
Tim thought, for sure.
yeah,
And he was able to kind of level set me a little bit on that one,
yeah.
so
Me
much so
too.
that I
So
even was able to use some of that argument when we did our live episode at Esto, right?
Esther, yeah, that's funny.
So
Yeah, that
that
was a
was a
great
great
episode.
one. Um, our two RFP discussions, and this is selfish for me because I have a vested interest in the RFP process in the destination marketing space, right? And would love to see it improve. And those two episodes were really kind of the therapy for me that the previous
Hmm.
two had been for you, right?
Yeah.
Where I was able to talk through some of the existential crises and frustrations facing vendors and that
Hmm.
dynamic with the industry. And I've got to imagine that destinations who hear that are going to really benefit from understanding what their vendors are going through as well and what that RFP
Hmm.
process is like. So those two episodes, the one you and I did together, and then when Dan Janes came on to kind of further that conversation, I really enjoyed
Hmm.
those a lot.
Which, by the way, Dan's episode is creeping up on Emily's as the number one episode. So I think he's like two or three listens behind. So that resonated with people for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know if listenership is tied to his staff's pay. I've got to look into that and see if that's part of the reason, but we'll see.
Maybe yeah, he may have boosted the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, got to give Dan a hard time on that one.
All right, we've got a
Um,
couple more minutes, Adam. So
Yeah, I mean, I've got two more, and they're really simple.
okay.
I actually thought Caleb Sullivan's comments on networking and the value of building relationships without expecting anything in return. I thought
Hmm.
that was really important. Excuse me.
Bless you.
I thought that was really important and valuable. I really enjoyed that conversation that we had. And then it
Hmm.
all culminated on stage at Esto to be there doing our live episode on stage. I thought that was so fun. I thought the audience was great. The structure of the conversation was a lot of fun. And you and I were able to really kind of showcase what's made this show great. We argue both sides of an issue and make sure that everybody that's listening can understand the full picture. And I thought we did a good job of that at Esto.
Yeah, if we do say so ourselves.
Yeah.
No, we got good feedback, and I'd love to do that again at other destination events. It's fun to spar with you in real life, not knowing what was going to happen. So without the ability to go edit if I look
Yeah.
stupid or something. So it was great, man. I mean, thank you for being a part of the show and coming on this crazy journey with me. I'd wanted to do this for a while, and I'd mentioned it to a couple of people, and you're like, heck yeah, let's do it. So you jumped on the crazy train and joined me on this adventure, and it's surpassed my expectations in terms of listenership. The destination is just amazing, and the feedback we get, like when literally, I mean, we had a guest recently, Christian Mengel, who heard my voice at a conference. I was talking to someone at a networking event. He heard my voice and came up and said, I listened to your podcast, right? That's crazy. It's kind of
That's
surreal.
amazing.
Um, so it's been a lot of fun. But I think what's most important is I've learned a lot, right? I think in terms of my ability to do my job as the president of Visit Myrtle Beach, I'm much better prepared to do that now than I would have been without the show. And I hope that the people in the destination listening feel the same way, that in some way these little conversations, even if it's one or two thoughts or ideas that we're sharing with them, slightly shift them individually. Brad Dean said something early on when we were still sort of struggling to find our voice in our audience. And he said, listen, it's not about your audience size that matters. It's who's listening, because those people are influencing the industry, right? Those are the leaders in the industry that are now mentoring other people and leading the ships for their individual DMOs. And so I do think we've made a little dent in the universe, in our little corner of the universe in this DMO world. So I'm glad to be doing it. I hope we do another 50 more episodes, another 500 more episodes, and it's just going to continue to evolve and improve. And we want feedback from folks. We want people to let us know what they like, what they don't like, and more importantly, we want you to come with your opinions. If you have a pet peeve or a friction point or something that's frustrating you in the industry, this is the home for you to come and talk about it. This is the home. It's a safe space for us to have honest, non-judgmental conversations. And yeah, it's been a blast, Adam. Thank you for joining
One of the
us.
highlights of my career, for
It
sure.
was awesome. Well, thank you. Well, that's enough gushing, guys. Please reach out to us. Let us know if you want to be on the show. Let us know what you think. Leave a review. And Adam, if they want to find you, where can they do that?
Adam at thebrandrevolt.com, on LinkedIn, or of course on Tourism IQ.
And you can find me, the content marketer of the year, Stuart Butler, at stuart.butler@visitmyrtlebeach.com, or on LinkedIn. I've not been active there recently, but I just went through my messages, which was out of control, and caught up on all my stuff. So now I think I'm going to get back to posting. I'm working on my goals for next year, the end of this year, next year. And I think one of them is I'm going to be publishing more. Like I really want to get back to publishing content. So that's one of
I
my
love it.
goals. But thank you guys for listening. And thank you for listening for 50 episodes. Until next time, this has been Destination Discourse.
Thanks, everybody.